So, good morning, everyone. We will talk about user modeling in HCI. In the previous lectures, we looked at human factors from visual and auditory perception, and we looked at basics of cognition and motor action. Today, we will look at that how we can combine all these theories into a single model. And many times you will see that there also exists user model which doesn't look at human factors, or rather, it is based on derived interface parameters. And we will look at different way of implementing user models and their pros and cons, and also the open challenges in user modeling domain. And user modeling is useful for multiple purpose. That means simulating user interaction, then predicting user interaction with a particular user interface and use it as a way of evaluating user interface, and finally, of course, develop virtual model. So in this lecture we will mostly look at the cognitive aspect of user modeling, while digital human model, or DHM, which is traditionally taught in ergonomics lecture, that looks at more about the anthropomorphic details of human modeling. And at least theoretically, if you combine a digital human model with a user model, you should get a humanoid or virtual human which is mimicking human activities both physically as well as psychologically or physiologically. And there, of course, some research has been already undertaken on that aspect. So, before going into detail of user model, let us first look at what we mean by model. So, model is something that bridge between the theory and observation, and sometimes the arrow may also go the other way around, that the model can also contribute towards theory. So, one good example perhaps we can borrow from the domain of astronomy. Say, for example, Edmund Halley, he was very famous in observing stars in southern hemisphere, then movement of planets in front of sun, and also movement of the famous comet named after him. So those were observation, but then he inspired Sir Isaac Newton to formulate the laws of motion. So then the observations lead to a new theory, and then he subsequently used Newton's law of motion to predict that when the presently known as Halley's comet will return, and which eventually returned, although Edmund Halley himself didn't live to uh, see that. And but this is true that Edmund Halley, he inspired Newton to formulate the, or at least he himself published the Principia Mathematica, which you can still see at the Royal Society of London. And this way, that theory and observation, they go in cycle. That means sometimes theory gives rise to observation. That means presently we predict that where we can see a celestial object, and also the observation or the model can also contribute to theory. That means using the model itself, we formulate theory. So today we will look at types of different types of user model. We will broadly classify them into two categories, and then for different types of HCI models, we will look at, first we will introduce the model, where I try to explain that why this model was invented or why it was used at the first place. Then um, many researchers, they work on this user model, so we look at the variations of the same user model, and then we look at its characteristics from the point of view of its pros and cons, and we end the lecture with a few open questions on user modeling, or we may even say that some open questions on HCI research. So we can broadly classify any models, not only user model, but any models in science, into two categories. One is the exploratory models, that where we observe and try to develop a model which explain the observation. Contrary to that, we can also have predictive model, in which case we have the model in the form of a equation or in the form of a complex mathematical representation, and we use the model to predict some physical phenomena. So as we will go into subsequent user model, we will look at both aspects, and it is not like that we can classify all models in this category, because sometimes the model can be used for both purpose. That means to explain observation and also to predict, and that will be an ideal model which we can use for both purposes. But in reality, we'll see that each model, although they aim to do both, but practically they used for one of the two purposes. So first, the definition of user model, and it is a real task. Uh, Around 2010 to 13, I was involved in a European Union cluster of projects called Virtual User Modeling and Simulation, and we spent many hours of discussion to come up with a acceptable definition of user model. So perhaps the most acceptable form of user model will be a machine readable representation of user. That means when you are interacting with the machine, you have an expectation from the machine, and if the machine also has an expectation about its user, we can and it's stored in a machine readable way, that we can refer as a user model. But later we will see that this machine readable representation may take many different forms. So human modeling, as we have already looked at in the previous lectures, like we spent quite a lot of time on Fitts law last week. Higgs law predicts visual search time, again following a similar logarithmic principle like Fitts law or Shannon's information theory. Marsh model of vision was an early model to model visual perception. But the first model that we can term, which was specifically used for human computer interaction task, was the command language grammar at Xerox PARC. And remember, this time we have DOS type of interface. That means we typed comment on a computer console and the output also comes as written text. So this was not meant for present WIMP or Windows icon menu pointer type of direct manipulation user interfaces. However, it didn't model any human factor. Rather, it tried to predict the next comment from the history of users already typed comment. And still now, similar system has been used by many online query system where you are talking to a virtual agent, say to complain your uh, or complain booking for your telephone or any particular service. So these type of models are still in use, and they basically store your past history or the existing interaction with the machine and use that to predict that what you are going to do next. So the first model that looked at modeling human factors, we can term as the model human processor. We briefly talked about it in the earlier lecture when we were talking about the SOAR cognitive architecture, and it was published in this famous book on the psychology of human computer interaction by Card, Moran and Newell. This can be considered as the first HCI user model that tried to model human factors, although pretty simplistically, but still it was a working model. And as we looked at in the previous week's lecture, that the model a human processor, it modeled human activity by dividing it into mainly three aspects: perception, cognition, and motor action, and works like a cycle. And later this model human processor, it lead to a family of models called Gomes family of models, which are still the most used general purpose user model. And as you will see in the next few slides, that it's pretty easy to comprehend and use in practice. But besides GOM, there were other attempts on making similar HCI models or user models, like using formal grammar, which generally taught in both linguistics, and if any of you gone through any course on automata theory or compiler design, you may be well aware of formal grammar. And then cognitive architecture, again we talked about SOAR and actor architecture in the last lecture, so those were also attempted to make HCI model like other psychology experiment. And since there are more than one option, so of course people try to mix and match more than one approaches and try to see if it can lead to any better model. And then there is a widespread use of application specific models, and perhaps those are the most common or widely used models because those are tied up a particular application, and that's why it's pretty easy to use. So we will look at their general purpose and some effort to standardize similar effort. But again, the previous three GOMS, formal grammar or cognitive architecture, tried to work for any general purpose human computer interaction task, while the application specific models look at specific applications. So first, let us look at the GOMS model. So GOMS stand for this four word: goal, operator, method, and selection. So it tried to follow this. If you remember this SOAR cognitive architecture, where we were talking about this dividing high level goal into multiple sub goals, and then uh, solve these sub goals in the form of first order logic. So GOMS actually make it even simpler, and we do not need to work on first order or predicate logic. So it is as simple like that. So for example, think about your Windows interface. So say we want to open a folder. So that will be our goal. So then we have a set of operators available to us, like we can move the mouse cursor, we can click mouse, and then of course we can press any key. So like for example, press enter is one such operator. Now there are multiple methods to open the folder. So for example, we can double click on the icon, probably the most common way we work. Then we can select the icon and then press enter, or we can move the mouse cursor towards the icon and then right click on the icon and select open from a pop-up menu. So all these constitute different methods to achieve the same goal. So we will select one of these methods to achieve our goal, and we will undertake this method using a set of available operators. So for any general purpose interaction task, what we need to do is we have to set up the goal that will depend on the that will depend on our present task in hand. Then we have to define a set of operator, and we will see in the very next slide that actually there is a small and final set of operators for most operating system or HCI task. And then we have to select, or we have to look at all possible method and select one of the method, and using that we can actually predict that how the human operator will work. So the whatever so far I discussed, that was the original GOMS model proposed by Alan Newell. So, but then it has been made further simpler, in which case they are based on that existing computing system, where, remember, this is, I am talking about mid 80s, so still there were no smartphones, or internet was also not there. Internet started in 1991. So that time it was fine with six operators, and you can find that for many HCI tasks, still now it actually holds true. So these six simple tasks are pressing a key, moving the pointing device to a specific location, making pointer drag movements, performing mental preparation, which is kind of abstract all cognitive activities of remembering or recognizing uh, or thinking in whatever form, and then moving hands to appropriate locations, and finally waiting for the computer to execute a command. So in present state, the waiting of for the computer is pretty small. compared to other activities in when we are working, say, for most machines. But in some cases, like if you are doing a very data intensive operation or something, you are working with a low bandwidth connection, then of course that waiting time for the computer will be higher. So KLM stands for keystroke level model, and the KLM model not only limits the number of operators only to 6, but it also predict approximate time for performing all these operators. And this approximation means there was a mean and a plus minus standard deviation. So basically what you can do with the KLM model, that you can think of a method to achieve a goal, and then you can break this method into through these 6 primitive operations, and thus you can predict approximate time of task completion for any HCI task. And still now you can see that even if you think about a smartphone or doing something, tapping on the smartphone, so you can still take similar approach and predict task completion time, and based on that you can compare different user interface. Now in practice what it turns out to be that when and in the next slide we will see and we will explain it, that the GOMS model works for mostly expert users. That means the best case situation or the minimal time to undertake a particular task in a user interface. But it turns out to be that humans can perform certain tasks even faster than it is predicted by KLM models. So then Bonnie Jones in Carnegie Mellon, she took help from our traditional scheduling chart or the CPM and part analysis. So CPM stands for critical path method. And when we do a project planning, what we do that we define several tasks, and we define some dependency among the tasks, and we find out the total plan execution time by calculating a critical path. That means the critical set of operation that has to be completed, and which based on the dependency among tasks. So similarly, she defined this task as this execution of operation, and she exploit the our multitasking capability or performing multiple tasks in parallel, and predicted the total completion time based on the critical path method. And that particular implementation of GOMS is known as CPM GOMS. And then David Kiras, he took attempts to improve the usability of the GOMS model itself by taking natural language input from the user. So NG NGOMS, L stands for natural GOMS language, and GLEAN is another such approach, in which case you define a problem in natural language, and using natural language processing techniques, it will break up the task into these simple operators and give you the total task completion time. So the characteristics of GOMS model was initially, since it's derived from the model human processor, that it was taking a initially it was thinking about a serial processing of activities like this cycle, that perception, cognition, motor action, although later on it has exploited the parallelism in operation, and it's extensively used in HCI because due to its simplistic nature and quick prediction of task completion time, which is just a summation compared to complicated parameter tuning or mathematical operation in the later models that we will look at. But the main problem of GOMS model like that, it gives you the best case scenario. That means it doesn't accommodate any error or exploration. So the GOMS model is only used to compare expert performance, but it and it also is a prediction of performance, but it doesn't specify you that how much time you may need to learn a particular interaction task, or what are the possibility of errors in a particular user interface. Those aspects it doesn't tell you. So it will only can be used to compare user interface based on the best case performance situation, and in many cases that is probably what we want to achieve. So later on, another type of models came up, which are known as formal grammars. So formal grammars used help from the language model or It's originate from this automata theory. So think of like you can think of like the English language, that we have a set of terminal symbols or alphabet A B C D E F G H, like that. Then we have a set of rules to construct words and to set up words in a sentence, and then we have a knowledge by which we can combine these words into meaningful sentences. So very similar approach was taken to model HCI task also, like the previous, like the KLM operations, like moving mouse pointer, clicking on an icon, or pressing a particular key on keyboard, that we can model as operators or terminal symbols like A B C D E F G H, like that. Then we can the human computer interaction task can be defined as a set of rules, that what you can do with the mouse pointer, what you can achieve by clicking a mouse pointer. Like mouse pointer, you can probably, in Windows you can both left click, right click, and double click. In a Mac type of system you can only click. On a smartphone based system you can also have operation in the form of tap and dragging. So like this we can combine the terminal symbols in the form of rules to design interaction, and then the set of sentences that can be designed can be modeled as knowledge, that to perform a certain task. Say for example, in the previous case, the opening a folder, you have to remember a set of rules, that or a sequence of operations, like I have to move the mouse pointer towards the folder, I have to stop movement on the folder, and I have to double click the mouse pointer or the mouse left button. So this sequence of operators, that is similar to the sentence, and this you have to remember to achieve the particular human computer interaction task, that how to open a folder in a Windows Explorer user interface. So there were two versions of this formal grammar based user modeling. One was the task action language, which advocated for minimizing the size of grammar, so that we need not to remember a lot of rules or terminal symbols. So if we have a limited set of, like in the KLM models, there were only 6 operations. And also, if we can minimize the size of grammar or the set of rules, then it will be easier for anyone to uh, learn a particular device to how to operate it. So, for example, you can think about your smartphone, that how much time you want to operate a smartphone. On the other hand, you can compare it to operate the CNC machine in our smart manufacturing setup, that you really need to go through a formal course to know how to make it run, because it has a more number of operators, a more number of rules, which we can model by uh, using the terminologies of formal language, and it will lead to a much bigger size of grammar than we require to operate our smartphone. And then another such approach was the task action grammar, which use very similar concept, but it advocates for consistency among the rules, so that we can by we need not to learn too many rules, but if the rules are consistent, then we, by knowing the very basic of the rule, we can do many other activity, and also to define simple tasks. So the characteristics was that the formal grammar based models, they do not model performance, or they cannot or try not to predict performance like the Gomes model, but rather they can try to model competence. They can model knowledge and learning, which the Gomes model couldn't, because it already defined the 6 operators. But it was difficult to define unique set of simple tasks, and to as computing system becomes more and more complex, and more functionalities were available, it turns out to be that even moderate HCI task becomes too complicated using this formal language based approach. And it was presently, there is not many research going on similar type of user modeling. So next we can look at cognitive architectures. So we already briefly talked about it, that how Alan Newell presented a paper in 1972 Carnegie Symposium about combining multiple smaller modeling approach in cognitive psychology, and tried to formulate unified theories of cognition, even if we cannot come to a single theory, with a very big ambition of making a virtual human. And a set of example of such cognitive architectures are SOAR, which uses this concept of state space model and formal logic to model human activity. So SOAR stands for the state, operator, and result uh, from the way it was implemented. So it used the symbolic approach. That means try to model all human cognitive activity by using symbol, and used a rule-based system which fires based on first-order logic principles, and it model the learning new knowledge by constructing new rule from the existing set of rules, and it was implemented like a automated theorem prover. Still in theoretical computer science, a lot of research is going on the automatic theorem prover, where you have a prior set of propositional logic statement and a set of rules, and as the system goes on, it learns new rules, and it can start execute the new rule on the existing propositional logic statements, and you can also add new propositional logic statement, which kind of like your new knowledge you can add to the knowledge base and run the system. So you can try such a simple system. It's called Clips, and you can download the system from my course website. So Clips is just an expert system, but SOAR is a very similar system. But it, of course, went take it a bit forward in modeling all human cognitive activity. And the ACTAR is the other system which looked at the hybrid architecture. That means it's tried to combine both connectionist approach, which is popularly we learn in the neural network based lectures. And in the last lecture, we looked at the spreading activation model, that if you remember these different colors of bubbles and how we recall uh, facts from evidence. So it also try to predict time of spreading activation. So David Kiras make a very interesting contribution to the cognitive architecture domain, that SOAR and ACTAR initially they only looked at the cognition, but they did not try to model perception and motor action. So EPIC model proposed by David Kiras, it modeled the perception and motor action. Motor action was mostly modeled by Fitts law, and later on the EPIC model of perception and cognition was adopted by the ACTAR community, and present version of the ACTAR model is known as ACTAR PM, where P and M stands for perception and motor action. And it is again based on uh, Fitts law, the motor action module, and the perception was also partly based on the Hicks law, this predicting visual search time from number of screen elements. EPIC stands for Executive Process Interactive Control. And just to let you know that you can download the SOAR and ACTAR model. It is implemented in a programming language called Lisp, and these are freely downloadable. And a very different approach I found in a now I should term it old. It was not old when I was doing my PhD around uh, 10, 12 years ago. It's called CORE, and it was the paper I read was published by the NASA Ames Research Center, and it took a novel approach of defining or human uh, machine interaction as a constraint satisfaction problem. So the constraint came from both environmental constraint, that say maybe high G factor or high vibration factor, and also the range of human activity, and the objective function is defined as the goal of the human computer interaction task, and then they kind of solve a optimization problem to predict that whether or how quickly one can satisfy the objective function within the set of constraints. But I should confess that in recent time I do not see any um, paper or any research work which took forward this work. But still, I cover it in the lecture because I found that this is a pretty interesting approach than the other symbolic or connectionist or traditional approach of human-computer interaction modeling. So the characteristic of these cognitive architectures is that they can model any performance, although theoretically, and they extensively used to model psychological experiments. That means all um, someone do a visual search experiments or something like re reaching experiment. That means reaching a particular place or um, say picking and placing, like type of activity which we initially design in robotics lecture, that picking and placing an object or reaching somewhere. So this type of basic psychological experiment, there are plenty of research which used or tuned parameters of actor or SOAR model to do that. But they need detailed knowledge of psychology when it requires to tune parameters. And also they are not very simple to use like the Gomes model. Say for example, using Gomes model, you do not need a lot of engineering training. That if you understand even the design of the user interface, you can break it up into a set of through the 6 simple operators and sum up the total time and can have some sort of prediction with a certain degree of accuracy. But to use a actor or a SOAR model, you do need to first understand the model and tune parameters and then execute the model to get any prediction, which is more needs more knowledge on psychology, and it's more time consuming than running a Gomes type of model. So the mixed approaches, what they try to do, that remember in the Gomes that the whole domain of cognition that has been abstracted into a single operator, that in mental preparedness. So people try to use the detail of cognitive architecture and make more accurate prediction of the KLM Gomes operator using cognitive architecture based models. So to such approach is a programmable user model or PUF and actor simple. But the result was not very um, optimistic. I can say that none of these systems have been uh, taken forward by other researchers. That it actually lost both the simplicity of Gomes and the details of cognitive architecture. So it cannot either keep the simplicity of Gomes or the way Gomes can be applied, and it also lost the details of cognitive architecture because it tried to use the cognitive architecture only to predict a simple operator instead of the whole activity. So later on, there is presently a whole range of conference and journal. It's called User Modeling and Adaptive Personalization (UMAP). They also have a annual ACM conference as well as a journal by Springer on the same name, which is a pretty well-known journal in the field. And in such journal and conferences, you will find a lot of user models which are developed by for specific application like online recommender system or e-learning system, predicting web link when you are browsing. And most of this model has a common structure, that it has a user profile which stores some sort of information either about the user or about the user interface, and there are plenty of argument on what constitute a user profile, considering that in Europe there are many laws which prohibits to share even gender or age related information of users among different service providers. So there are different approach on storing the user profile, but some information or machine readable information about either the user or the interface or the man machine interaction has been stored as user profile. And there is a inference machine which is implemented in many different ways. Sometimes it may be a simple rule based system that if you press 2, then you will the system will speak in English to you. If you press 3, it will speak in Hindi to you. If you press 4, an operator will talk to you. So it may be as simple as such a logic, or it can be a more complicated logic like a Bayesian inferencing system or a deep learning model, which will read your user profile and your present interaction and predict an output uh, to you. So there are a couple of ISO standards presently I am looking at, and I am also presently working on making a new ITU recommendation. So ITU stands for International Telecommunication Union, which is the telecom branch of United Nations, and ISO stands for the International Standardization Organization, who are takes care of all standardization. So these are the two ISO standards. So one was published in 2010. It talks about software individualization and talks about management of user profile. Doesn't really specify that what constitute a user profile, but rather tell that if you have to had to have a user profile, that how you can make it, how you can maintain consistency of the profile, how you should store it, how to activate or deactivate it, and so on. While the other standard ISO IEC 24756, it talk about a common access profile, mostly for making user interface accessible, or it mostly think about assistive technology, and it propose a common access profile in the form of a hierarchical structure, and all profile details, say for example length and width of a virtual keyboard, or the modality of interaction, whether it will be voice based, whether it will be keyboard based. All these profile information has been described uh, through the type, name, qualifier, that whether it is required, optional, or can be excluded, description of the access profile, and linkage by which it creates this hierarchical structure among different user interface elements. So these are the present standard, and as I in a later lecture we will talk about only common user profile format, which is more specific to my personal research. But as I'm telling that presently I am working with many other stakeholders to make it a ITU recommendation. So we will talk about it in a later lecture on user interface personalization based on a common user profile. And that lecture is also available in YouTube. You can check it out, or you can wait till we describe it. So with that, we will finally look at some open problems on the user modeling. And since user modeling constitute a very big part in human computer interaction, or I may say that uh, the human computer interaction started to exist through the aim of modeling user, as as model human processor was first published in the book of psychology of human computer interaction. So you can also consider this as open challenges in the general field of HCI as well. So the first is the definition. So we talked about many different types of user model, and now that's why I also have many confusion that what can be a single definition of user model, which can be covered by or which can be agreeable to different proponents of user models, starting from the guys who developed cognitive architectures to the person who is constitute a user model to predict your search query in your browser. So that is not a trivial question to answer. Then the user is a complicated system that although the cognitive architectures are too much detailed, but the GOMS is too simplistic, and modeling user, and when all we looked at multi-user system like a collaborative platform, then user modeling becomes more complicated because we have to also model human interaction, and that uh, require a much more training or much more research, not only on the technology but also on the human factor side. Then diversity of applications. So remember that this model human processor or GOMS model, they were started in the mid 80s, or maybe mid 90s, I can say. So during that time, we usually have a personal computer. Even not everyone has personal computer, but we have a single computing unit with us. But now all of us has multiple computing unit. That means we have a TV at home, which is about to be a smart TV. We have a smartphone, which is a computer powerful enough. You have access to a computer in your office or in your lab, which is your office computer. You have a personal laptop, and you will expect some sort of uniformity among all these electronic devices, and all device has their own range of activities or operations, so that makes life more complicated in terms of user modeling. Then we talked about the partial picture even during when we are talking about the Alan Newell's paper in 1972 Carnegie Symposium, and still that problem exists, that many user model we looked at take a very uh, small goal, that I only want to do this, and the result is that again there are a lot of user model or user modeling research which solve the problem partially and do not try to provide something generic enough which can be shared or used by multiple service providers. And finally, that who will be the user of the user model. That means as I already told, that this cognitive architecture, it is too difficult to use, and the GOMS model is easy to use but it's too simplistic, and it only works on expert performance. So when we try to develop some sort of user profile like the ISO standard I just talked, still now they have been confined only within the research community, and many industry they have their own standard on storing user information or interface user meta information about human machine interaction, which is not shareable and which is not accessible. And the result is that for each device you have to personalize it individually, and this information is not portable among multiple devices, although it is completely possible to do so. So the level of fidelity of user model, that and the usability of the user model itself is also an open problem. So the open question, if we can summarize, that the optimum fidelity, that which level of details you can do that, that the cognitive architectures like actor, it looks at the maybe the neural details, and many work has also tried to predict synaptic activity of individual neurons or functional regions of brain. And while the GOMS model or application specific model looks at a much uh, from a much lower fidelity, that means how much time you will take to move a mouse pointer, or even that what will be the next query you are going to type after your present search query. And in I think in 2011, if I'm not mistaken, in the human computer interaction international conference, it's called HCII conference, a pretty big conference. David Kiras actually presented a very interesting paper in which he compared GOMS model with his own EPIC architecture, and he showed that the level of or the accuracy of prediction in both GOMS, which operates in a much lower fidelity than a cognitive architecture model, is comparable. And his explanation was that when we are modeling at more and more fidelity at each level of modeling, we are also accumulating error. And it doesn't mean that if I model at say neural level or at unit task level, than a higher level modeling, that I will get best accuracy. So the level of fidelity or level of details of modeling is one open question. Then what to model? Like the formal languages, they try to model knowledge or competence, while the GOMS model or cognitive architecture, they model performance. And all are equally important when we are designing a new user interface, that I want the user to learn it quickly. I want the user to learn it intuitively. And I also want the user to be efficient, that he will perform his desired task faster in my user interface. So how to achieve all this? And then there is a big controversy, that can user model replace real user trial, that means experiment with real users, and why can't we just go for more experiments? So the proponents say that well, user model, it can open a much bigger design space to you. That means when you are doing an early stage design, like when you do say conceptual design in your MDIS project, and many times you are have to do say 10 conceptual design. So it is not possible or feasible for you to do embodiment design and implement all these 10 conceptual design and evaluate them with user trial. So if we have some sort of simulation feature, think in terms of designing a user interface also, and you will very soon learn it using Visual Studio. You can see that by simple drag and drop you can design a user interface. So that leads you to design the same user interface in many different way without implementing the background functionality. So it is not required for, or it may not be feasible for you to undertake user trial for all possible alternatives. So in those cases, some knowledge of user model or simulation can help you to widen your design space. On the other hand, user model should not or never should completely replace user trial. That means your final design should not be only based on user model. Later, whatever you are finally going to deploy, that should be tried with real user in the form of alpha beta testing. That means in-house testing with real user, and then beta testing, that means outside testing with real user. And in a later lecture we will look at usability evaluation and conducting user trial, and also doing qualitative uh, research. So on those lectures we will see that how user model and user trial, they can coexist, and how we can combine them together to do a better design or development. So with that, I will stop talking. So these are the takeaway points for today, that the concept of user modeling, we talked about different kinds of user models, their advantage and disadvantage, and we can conclude with the open research challenges in user modeling or in the wider domain of human computer interaction.